Welcome, everyone, to Lunch Without Lunch. I'm Amber Rowden. I'm the community storyteller here at Rainforest Alberta in Calgary. We also have Bridget Legault, who is our community manager in Calgary. We also have a chapter in Edmonton, a steering committee, a volunteer steering committee in Edmonton. So if you're looking to get involved in the Edmonton innovation scene, you can contact up in Edmonton. So Lunch Without Lunch, if you haven't been to Lunch Without Lunch before, please share an emoji on the screen, introduce yourself in the chat. And Lunch Without Lunch is our weekly connection to learn about what's happening in the Alberta innovation, tech sector, entrepreneurship, get to know one another, and just kind of create connections to build new ideas. So you can follow along with us on social media at Rainforest AB and at Rainforest YEG. So to get started, I want to share land acknowledgement. So in the spirit of reconciliation, I want to acknowledge that we work and play on the traditional territories, the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. If you're coming from somewhere else in the province, in the country, or in the world, please feel free to share land acknowledgement in the chat. And as always, we're always looking for ways to engage and demonstrate leadership on reconciliation. So if you would like to engage in that, please contact myself or Bridget. And if you'd like to share land acknowledgement with us at Lunch Without Lunch or in any other events that we do at Rainforest, we would be happy to collaborate and talk to you about that. So what is Rainforest Alberta? Well, we are a community of innovators, doers, dreamers, entrepreneurs, kind of anyone you can think of that are just building ideas and building connections and building a community of diversity and trust and culture of inclusion in Alberta. So we have a little video that I'm going to share with you.
What does it take to realize an idea or for a seed to sprout? At Rainforest Alberta, we know the answer is rooted in trust. Traditionally, Albertans have cultivated their ideas in established systems. Inputs that don't fit these systems are weeded out. Opportunities for growth are missed. But now, Albertans want a dynamic landscape that can evolve organically, like a rainforest. At Rainforest Alberta, we believe a culture of trust is the fertile soil where ideas grow. Our budding innovation ecosystem is a network of relationships pulling each other up as they push forward in their own field. Trust breaks down barriers. An open, inclusive network increases collaborative innovation. Successful breakthroughs inspire new ideas. A cycle begins. Rainforest Alberta is a movement to amplify trust by cultivating honesty, inclusion, and accountability. How? Our social contract holds us accountable to demonstrate trust across the province. We meet to have honest conversations around collaboration. This leads to more inclusive spaces for everyone to fearlessly build new ideas together. By raising the standard of trust, Alberta's ideas, talent, and resources can be evergreen. Visit rainforestab.ca to sign the social contract and start growing together.
So we use 6 pillars to guide our conversations and actions, and not all are weighted equally. In any ecosystem, the right balance is crucial, and we measure these each year through our scorecard assessment. So generally speaking, Calgary has a scorecard assessment, Edmonton has a scorecard assessment. However, we are going to do a pan-provincial scorecard just to gain a broader understanding of the Alberta innovation and tech ecosystem. The scorecard will be coming out next year sometime, so stay tuned for that. But we measure these 6 pillars, and culture is the most heavily weighted one. So that's, building a like-mindedness of trust and new ideas and diversity and inclusion. 20% are leaders. So those that we are following in the ecosystem, we're watching them build and aspiring to be like leaders. 15% are resources. So those are partners that we work with in the innovation space, such as Platform, the Calgary Innovation Coalition, Careers in Tech and Innovation. There's lots of resources in the sector that me or Bridget would be happy to chat with you about. 10% for engaged activities. So these are any kind of events that are happening within the innovation sector. Lunch Without Lunch would be one of them. Tech Talent Thursdays, Tech Talent Tuesdays, all of those kind of things. 15% is policy and infrastructure. So that would be, government funding and everything that has to do with the government. And 10% are role models. So these are people that you look up to in the ecosystem that are changing mindsets and people that you just admire. And so tips to making the most out of Lunch Without Lunch. If this is your first Lunch Without Lunch, please introduce yourself in the chat. If you've been to Lunch Without Lunch before, also introduce yourself in the chat. Make those people that are new to Lunch Without Lunch feel welcome, and that's where collaboration happens. So what you're working on, what you're looking for, what you're most excited about today, just share it in the chat. Connect with individuals through direct messaging. Put your camera on. It's always great to see everyone's faces. Ask questions that lead with curiosity rather than offering advice. Ask questions and connect on our digital community powered by Inkly, which I will chat about in a couple slides. You can check out #lunchnotes for a capture of today's chat on our Slack channel. And our recordings are posted on YouTube. So if you missed a session, you can check it out. Or if you want to rewatch, you can check it on our YouTube channel. All right, now our social contract that was mentioned in the video, these are 10 values that we live, work, and play by. It's not so much a code of conduct, it is, but it's also a way of living. So we ask that if you join the Rainforest community, you take these 10 values and you put them into practice in the way you build companies, the way you interact with others, and just in your daily life to be an all-around good person. And so if you scan that QR code, that'll take you to the social contract. Once you sign the social contract, you'll gain access to our online community, our Slack channel, newsletters, and I'll also throw the link in the chat. And then our digital community powered by Inkly. This is a place where you can ask questions, discover new learnings and resources across Alberta. So if you're curious about how to become a co-founder, if you're curious about starting a company, whether it's tech or non-tech related, if you're looking for ways to get into the tech ecosystem, this is a great place to ask those questions, and you'll be connected with people that have those answers, that are living those experiences. And so if you scan that QR code, that'll take you to the digital community. Definitely recommend scanning that QR code right now if you can. If not, I will throw the link in the chat so you can connect that way. So that is it for me. Let me just stop my share. So today, I'm really excited to introduce Tara of Career TLC. I had the chance to meet her at Inventures and just enjoyed the conversation. Such a lovely person doing such amazing work. And so she is an HR professional by trade who has spent 15 years in corporate environments, who has now turned an entrepreneur. She openly shares how her lived experience with her own ADHD fuels her passion, and I'm really excited to have her here to talk about neurodiversity, entrepreneurship, and her journey. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it to the wonderful Tara.
Thank you so much, Amber. I'm just going to share my screen, so bear with me here. Just while I'm doing that, I want to thank Rainforest. Absolutely, one of the most inclusive organizations that I know, and what I'm going to be chatting about today certainly does relate to culture and trust, and it really has to do with all of us on this call and all of our brains. So I just want to make sure everyone can see my screen okay before I start.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. So thank you so much for having me here. If you'd like to connect with me, I put my information in the chat, and I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit about my personal journey with you here today. So this is little mini Tara, what I didn't know back then. So just wanted to share a little bit about my kind of origin story. I have grown up in Edmonton, Alberta my whole life. I was raised by a single father, and I had to compete with twins as a brother and a sister that are fraternal twins. So the majority of my upbringing was like, hey, wait for me, hey, wait for me. And I just mentioned that because I really did have to learn resiliency at a very early age. My father as well really, really tough loved me. So it was, growing up, when it came to leaving the home at 18 and going to school, it was sort of, there's no money for a student, or there's no money for your post-secondary. He really said, he kind of pushed me out into the world to go and pursue my education. So I look back on this picture now, and I'm sure we all can relate, where you're kind of like, oh man, I wonder what I would have told my younger self, right? But yeah, this is going to be the start of a little bit of a journey. So some past observations of me in school, and this would have been everything from I think elementary, junior high, and into high school, is I do recall being the type of student that was sort of like, don't ask me a question. I was definitely like the shrugger in school. I wouldn't say I felt necessarily completely overwhelmed or unorganized, but I didn't really like the spotlight. And I did notice that as I pursued education later on, that if it was reports or big assignments of any kind, that I would be hitting kind of a wall with some procrastination, which I hope that some of you on the call might relate with. And other fun observations that I've had of me growing up is that I've always been highly creative. That's just been where my brain has been drawn to. I'm proud to say that I designed my grade 12 yearbook cover, for example. I've always danced my whole life. You know, I was the captain of the cheerleading team at Hillcrest Junior High. And I've always loved to dance. I've always loved community. And I've always loved bringing people together. With respect to the kind of outward speaking like that I've always had a little bit of a loud voice. And one thing I have paid attention to growing up is if it's about justice or fairness or equity, I have always found myself to be the kind of the person that will stick my neck out for other people. I've always kind of been that advocate, or hey, questioning whether something is right, or hey, here's what I'm observing here, and I just want to kind of challenge that. So I am very, very grateful. I mentioned that my dad sort of, said, hey, here you go into the world. We didn't have money for post-secondary. And I do want to mention here that I'm forever grateful because one of my first jobs was Alberta Blue Cross. And I quickly learned at the time that they were willing to support educational funding. And for 4 long years, I woke up when it was dark. For those of you that, know Alberta weather and climate, it's sort of like wake up when it's dark, go to work at Blue Cross, and then I did night school for 4 years, achieving my Bachelor of Management degree in HR. And there were some long days, my friends, like a lot of Red Bull. Like it was a long process, but I mentioned here that I was always seeing opportunity, always kind of like very much like an opportunist. I saw it, I enrolled quickly, and I was like, this is going to better my future. So a shout out to Blue Cross, because I wouldn't have my degree if it wasn't for them. And I think that that's also important to know as we live our lives, like what are some of those privilege points that we have? And I'm forever grateful. Yeah. So entering my 20s, I basically really, really got thick-skinned quickly as I took a role with the government of Alberta as a very junior HR professional, supporting Calgary Young Offender Centre with the government of Alberta. So keep in mind, early in your career, most of us that get into human resources think to ourselves, well, we really like people. I mean, I like working with people. And then you kind of learn fast that you're actually not giving great names to people. You're really representing the organization. And some of these first years in my career were supporting employee relations files that were quite contentious. I call it my Orange is the New Black era, where I'm like, how did I even survive that era? That was just crazy. But I mention this because this experience really had me thick-skinned quickly, and it had me do tough work early on, which set a very base foundation for maybe being more neutral, being objective, being inquisitory, being investigative. And it was invaluable experience for me. In my 30s, I left the government and I went over to the city of Edmonton as, believe it or not, their first ever headhunter. So this was really cool. The vision in the recruitment section was that they were going to have an internal agency type model where any hard to fill positions, I would be sourcing on LinkedIn. I'd be reaching out and I'd be cold calling. So for some of you that have followed me on LinkedIn now, you might think, okay, she's pretty engaging, right? And I think part of that is because I've used it on the other side to engage. So I understand sourcing and I understand some of like the recruitment and engagement. And this was really, really rewarding to be able to recruit to positions that are in my city, the engineer that worked on the Walter Dale Bridge, for example, or several positions that were in technology, all different diversified positions. I also fell in love with coaching as a technique and as a profession, and became certified as a coach here. And I also added mom to my resume. This is my daughter Maddie now at age 12. So she's come quite a bit from when she was a tiny little peanut at the city. But I mentioned this experience because when you're in talent acquisition, on the other side, you start to see some of the discrimination, and you start to see how companies are measuring fit, right? So we've got profiling that happens. We've got really opinionated managers that I would have been influencing on going, tell me about these qualification statements. Like, help me understand, like, what's your deal breaker and what do we really need here? And furthermore, how do we test for competencies, right? And recruitment is such a tricky thing because usually fit is defined by typically a manager. So this is where I really started to see talent comes in all shapes and sizes, you know, all different cognitive ability, yet we're all being sort of run through this standardized process of an interview. This seems to be the structure that we're using, or the format that we're using to assess talent coming into our organizations. And I'm going to pause here, and I hope that everybody really relates with this quote that I'm sharing. I haven't always felt like I fit, but that is because fit is subjective. So I just want, you know, I just want everybody to kind of maybe read that one more time and kind of like really internalize what that means for you, because for most of us, as I'm describing, we grow up, we live in a family environment. Typically, we have expectations early on what our version of work might look like. And we have all of sort of these like pre-laid plans on what success and what career should look like, and also how we should behave in an environment, and how we should behave in an interview, right? So I just give some thought to that throughout the presentation. So while I'm best intentioned, and I know everybody on this call probably can relate with this too, we all have, we travel through these work environments and we're trying to do our best. And this is some of what I've heard throughout my career. I've heard, Tara, you're out of scope. Tara, I need you to be more mindful of your intention versus impact, your intent versus impact. And when that was coached or mentioned to me, it really was about being perceived as being very honest and blunt and direct in a moment. And where I saw risk, and I was like, ooh, we need to get in front of this. The environment that I was in felt that was too honest or too blunt. But I would mention this: if I'm plunked into a different environment where perhaps that more honesty in terms of communication approach was embraced, someone else might say this: hold on, Tara sees something right now. Tara, you have the floor. What is it that you see right now in terms of what you're trying to point out for us, right? So all of us are neurologically wired differently. Some of us have soft-spoken communication, others have more blunt communication. We're all very different. And nobody likes this phrase, right? I have some concerns. And I've heard that throughout my career as well. So what really opened my eyes is my work on Autism CanTech, which is where I've had the fortune of meeting so many of you on this call, especially with Rainforest, Val, Al. I really, really appreciate that I've had a chance to meet you. And what Autism CanTech was a federally funded program out of Norquest College here in Edmonton that promotes and reduces barriers to employment for autistic youth ages 18 to 30 that were demonstrating high competency in data analytics, data wrangling, digital asset management. So my role, while I've been a traditional HR business partner, as you've seen, I take this position. It's very diversity inclusion related. And my role was to go door knocking in industry in multiple sectors to say, have you ever considered, you know, somebody who's autistic? Do you know much about neurodiversity? Do you know much about the skill set? What I was met with was a bit surprising for me. So I've met everything from the manager that is sort of the compliance manager that, no. We hire people of all kinds. We're very diverse, like for sure. Diversity inclusion, we're top notch. We got it all figured out. For sure. Like send them over. I've met that person. I've met the social sort of impact manager that's usually in HR that sounds like this. Oh yeah, no, my cousin's autistic. I'd love to support this program. It sounds amazing. It sounds wonderful. Yeah, can you send me over some information? And I've also met professionals that were genuinely curious to learn more. And what I realized on this project is that there's a lot of stigma out there on how we're defining what autism is. And there's a lot of stigma out there on how we're defining even neurodiversity in general. So I mentioned these movies because I also did hear that this is like Rain Man, or this is like my cousin who is stimming at the kitchen table, right? Everyone has their own definition. And I want to make a mention here in a time where everybody is, I'm going to be bold and honest here, kind of diversity and inclusion fatigued. Like we're as a society, I fundamentally believe that people are like, I don't even know where to start anymore. Like seriously, is it DEI, EDI, DID, BE? Like honest, that's really, really real, right? But appreciating that this is real and this impacts all of us because all of us are diverse brains, right? Everybody on this call is, and everybody out there has a different brain. So it just really got me thinking about, interesting, this seems like a bit of a barrier. And what I also paid attention to is that managers were starting to feel just a little discomfort on managing somebody who's different. Their perception was that I'm going to be managing somebody who is different. So while I was on this project, interestingly enough, I received my own ADHD diagnosis. So while I was out there advocating for neurodiversity, I also received my own ADHD diagnosis. And I would say this as a career coach for so many of us. Some people are in acceptance when we get our diagnosis. Other people are like, what? What is the, what? No, denial. Others that I coach might be really angry. Like there's been several last years here, and I'm so glad I know now that I think different. So I just mention this because I don't let my ADHD diagnosis define who I am. It certainly has had me pay attention now from my origin story all the way to now in terms of how I function, some of my behaviors, some of how I operate. And that would be my invitation here, is that we have this global world of people that, I mean, right now, some are diagnosed, others are not diagnosed. We've got social media and Instagram and TikTok telling us that we have ADHD, and then we have other forms that don't. So however you identify on this call right now, just know that you're absolutely perfect and awesome, and you have a different brain than the next person on this Zoom call. So I started to ask myself, what role can I play in shifting mindsets about neurodiversity in general? I was starting to take a really keen interest in this, and this is a common thing if you're neurodivergent, that you like to hyper focus on topics that are of interest to you. So Tara goes down this rabbit hole. I'm learning as much as I possibly can now, and I'm thinking, how do I make cause for change here in a gentle approach to inviting other people in to learn about this as well. And I came off the project in March, and I can tell you I had the hardest day of my life when a job offer was presented to me to go back to what was perceived as stable, secure, back to an HR business partner role with a corporate environment that I had been in, or take a plunge into entrepreneurship and try consulting. And actually, one of my mentors, Alan Wise, is on this call today. And I just want to do a shout out to you, Alan. Alan's been encouraging me to take this jump for years. For years. He's just like, why don't you just try this? And so interesting, my life had presented this finish line, right, in my career journey on saying, Tara, do you pivot? As a mom, do you go back to this like 80 grand paycheck in a corporate environment where you know that your soul is going to die? Or do you give this thing a whirl? Do you think that there's a need for employers to learn about neurodiversity? Do you feel like there's a need for individual coaching, career coaching out there for the mid-career professional that is like COVID happened. There's got to be something else. Like, there's got to be something different. How do I understand me? And I decided to say yes to being authentic. I mean, and don't get me wrong, just I want to preface it. It is scary. It is terrifying, but I said yes to being authentic. I said yes to really evaluating who I am and how I can be in service to others and why this work is really, really important to me. And I think all too often, if you are neurodivergent, you might have some negative inner talk. You might have internalized ableism because you've been in work environments where you're just expected to sort of operate a certain way or behave a certain way or be a certain way. And you're kind of over here going, well, I totally function different than that, but I'll try my best. And we call that masking in our neurodivergent community. So for anybody on the call, whether you're neurotypical, neurodivergent, less about the names, we've all been in positions where we have come to work and we've kind of like faked it. And when we fake it, that can be exhausting, right? It can be tiring. So now, as I shared, I've gone out on my own to support individual success. I'm coaching individuals that are mid-career professionals that want something different. And I'm able to use my past HR experience and recruitment experience to prepare them for the job application process. Advocacy groups are starting to be a really big need for everybody in the workplace that doesn't feel like they fit, but need to know, like, how do I have that conversation with my manager about maybe a reasonable adjustment that I need to support my success. I'm mentoring some entrepreneurs. Also doing some neurodiversity facilitation with employers, supporting them on a gentle approach to saying, hey, we've kind of left neurodiversity, off to the side in all of our DEI plans, and really helping them integrate solutions and supports there. And this is me at Disrupt HR this past May, where I spoke to over 300 HR professionals about how we're kind of breaking up with the idea of neurodivergent professionals too early. And again, that would include folks that are autistic, have ADHD, dyslexic, other learning disabilities. Our talent, if nurtured the right way, comes in all different shapes and forms. So I know I'm a little punchy here with this slide, but I'm very persuasive about the fact that if we're only funneling candidates through one systematic process, we don't get diversity. In order to diversify our hiring, we need to diversify our process, right? To diversify our talent. So why this work matters to every business and every sector, as I've shared, we are all varied in our biodiversity, just the same as we are neurologically, right? So we are varied in our age, our gender, our sexual orientation, our religion. For whatever reason, neurodiversity has sort of like taken a little bit of a backseat. And there's a Garner report that I pull up often that indicates even HR professionals, 72% of them just don't know how to fit it in, which is why I stepped out to do some of this work. Crystal Bowen, who's also on this call, is also a neuroinclusion specialist. And it's important that we also work as a multidisciplinary team to really inform for our clients to make sure that they're seeing diverse perspectives. When there's lack of authenticity at work, that leads to natural burnout. Different minds need different enablements and different supports. I just was on a really interesting call about lazy girl jobs, which is now a trending strategy for Gen Zers who are like, you know what, you don't treat me well at work, I'm out of here. Like, I will go do a remote work that's fulfilling to me, that is satisfying to me, that is way less pressure. So we are seeing movement towards the future of work changing, and the future of work is shifting. And I think for generationally, some of us have been told, well, go get that job with a pension, go get that job that's stable. Or for tech, right? Tech can be very, very fast paced. But people are starting to really reconsider what fulfillment looks like in their own worlds and what is meaningful for them. And I think it's actually long past financial motivation now. I think it's definitely varied. So in general, we make a lot of assumptions in the workplace. It's normal to behave this way. And I would challenge, what is normal? Like, what is a normal brain and what is a normal way of thinking? You might hear, can't you meet this deadline? And we would be encouraging as neuroinclusion consultants that there's an opportunity to say, in order for that employee to meet the deadline, what do we need to know, or what strategies need to be in place for that individual to be successful, taking a very individualized approach versus this one size fits all approach. So the point I'm kind of trying to make on this slide is all too often we have a system, we have a structure, we have a way of doing things. Somebody's decided that that's the way along the way. And then we're just like, squeeze into this model. Everybody get in and squeeze and assimilate. And I would say that the opposite approach is neuroinclusion, to just keep it short, an individualized approach to saying, I'm really interested in what you need to be successful. You know, how do you operate? If I was to ask, you know, what's your learning style? Or if I was to ask you, you know, how do you do your best work? What would your ideal day look like? That is definitely neuroinclusive. Now, having this conversation, of course, I'm met with this. Of course, I'm met with the manager that's like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, no, listen, we're not making any changes here. This is how we've done it for years. This is just how we operate. And I mentioned here that I'm wired to be resilient and relentless and persuasive, which all three of those are definitely qualities of me and my neurodivergence. So I feel like I'm in the right place to be met with that. And then also to support these managers that are going to roll their eyes a little bit on understanding that if we don't take care of our people, and if we don't inquire more about what they need from a neurological perspective, they're going to be gone. They're not going to have people. Like they're just not going to have a workforce, right? Or they're going to have a really burned out workforce. So always tying it down to the bottom line. So here are the current global stats. 20% of the global population is reported to be neurodivergent. So this means that people are identifying with having ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyscalculia, Tourette syndrome. This list is so exhaustive, and I hope everybody on this call will appreciate that it's non-exhaustive because we're complex as humans. We might have intersectionality. There could be cultural components. There could be more than one of these that's in existence for somebody. And currently I'm creating a workplace training program for managers and HR with a strong message that you do not need to diagnose anybody. That's not your role. For each of us on this call, it's up to us to own how we operate individually, right? And also be comfortable with what we share or don't want to share in the workplace. So this isn't about going beep, 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 beep. Oh, Tara, she's got ADHD. Okay, I'm going to pull up the Google and I'm going to find out, okay, let's see. No, it's not that at all. It's very much about saying, I'm going to admit today, be comfortable with this idea that no brain thinks the same way. There's no right way of thinking. There's no right brain. And I'm going to appreciate that the people around me, my teams, my manager, my employee, family member, my child, friend, all need something different just because of how they're wired. Okay? So these stats, I can tell you for the neuroinclusion consultants on this call, we know that we're in a world where everybody's like, show me the stats. What are the stats? What's the data? But you know what? We just don't have them. And the reason for that is because no one's disclosing. That's why we're doing this work, to create healthier workplaces where people are actually coming forward and they're comfortable talking about it. It's not necessarily about an equity, like a survey. We can now report that X amount. It's just that no one's speaking up right now because there is stigma. So it applies to everybody, irrelevant of, again, all intersectionalities. And we need all the brains to be innovative and creative, right? To your point earlier, Amber, like irrelevant of what work we're doing, a lot of this does come down to culture and trust and embracing the diversity of thought that is needed to do all of these projects, whether you're a startup or a scale up or you're a venture capitalist looking to invest in something, you're going to think differently about how you invest. Or if it's public service or agriculture, we need all the brains to do all the things. And perhaps an easy way for us to kind of go about looking at this is normalizing minds of all kinds is appreciating that there is like a sliding scale on how we all think, how we all feel, how we all sense, how we all experience, how we all communicate, and starting there versus pathological language, right? Or deficit-based language. I can tell you as an ADHDer, I absolutely hate that it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, because the concept of neurodiversity is moving us away from deficit disorder, and it's moving us towards inclusion, a variation, a natural human variation in how we all think, feel, and experience the world around us. So some great starting points for anybody on this call in your own workplace is awareness training. Like, what is neurodiversity? And starting to start the conversation with a practitioner, get the brains talking, you know, have a lunch conversation, and like we are today, starting to talk about how we think and feel and how we would describe ourselves, and not care about the right language, and engage subject matter experts to support some inclusive design work. So we know that for most organizations, they might want to do better when they know better. And then it's about how do I bring in people from a culture perspective? How do I create that culture of psychological safety where it's like, I'm not going to judge you for having ADHD. I'm not going to judge you for being autistic. I'm cool with learning about your learning disability. There's no ramifications here. Nobody's getting let go if you tell me about how your brain works, right? Are we there yet? Absolutely not. We are still forging the path to that, to getting there. But there can be simple things that start now. So my takeaway today before I open the floor to questions, because I wanted to really make sure that I left time for that, is listen to your inner dialogue. And it may be the environment, it may not be you, right? But just appreciating that each of us are very unique in our own way. I don't think that we were ever intended necessarily to fit a one-size structure or system or process, right? Because we're all unique. When you hire, we are hiring for diversity of thought. So why aren't we nurturing that versus sort of like assimilate now into this work environment with an assumption, like I shared, that you're just going to be able to flourish. So I've done a lot of talking. I'm going to open the floor to any questions, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tara. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or unmute and ask Tara your questions.
Hi, Tara. I have a question.
Yeah. Hi, Alicia.
Hi. Our goal is to hire underrepresented people in tech because I think that that's where people's superpowers lay, and you should be taking advantage of all of the diversity because it's an asset, not, a deficit, like you were saying. That being said, when you have a startup, when you're an entrepreneur, system and processes, repeatable things are really, really important. So how do you optimize for people who their superpowers, the fact that they do things so differently, they do perform more differently than the average person, so you can get the benefit of having these different skill sets on your team without your profits going to out the window, because everything is super customizable. Like, getting that level of profitability relies a lot on repeatable standard processes and things. I don't know if I'm articulating that properly, but like, where do you find that sweet spot, and where do you go to get information on how to do that?
So when it comes to hiring underrepresented groups, I will focus on autism here, and please, for sure, Crystal, jump in if you'd like. I would suggest that there's a lot of information out there that already exists, that the interview process is in fact what's most discriminatory. And I'll just share why, okay? All of us I don't know how we survived it. We rolled our shoulders back. We look professional. We make eye contact on the call. We're probably very likable. We go in for that handshake at the end. All of these, what we would see as neuronormative activities that is just expected of us, right? And then we've got a manager that's like, I liked her. I liked her. She reminds me of me. Yeah, I really like her. I want to hire her, right? So the first advice that I would have for you, Alicia, is to consider not doing an interview. Whatever position that you're actually looking to recruit to, I would ask yourself, how can I test towards the competency towards this role? How can I not waste anybody's time and make sure that I'm clear with what my recruitment process is, but also invite the candidates or invite people to come and demonstrate that they can do this. So I'm going to pick on like our software engineer coding, right? For so many companies, they're not going to say, hey, can you code? And then have the individual hypothetically answer. They'll actually bring them in to demonstrate that they can code. So a really good example. The other piece that I would invite everybody on the call is to use very clear language. So as an HR professional who has drafted these postings before, just do a really quick scan of your job posting. Is there vague language? Excellent team player. We're looking for a technical guru. That was no offense to you, Andre. I know that you were on the call too. You know, like this is language that others are like, what is that? What does that mean? So doing a little bit of a check for what can be perceived as literal and staying away from that, being as specific as possible. The other thing that I always get is, should I give the questions out right away, right? We see postings all the time that say, let us know if you want an accommodation. Let us know if you need an accommodation. I would say this, that's the first way and surefire way for you to expose candidates, right? It's like, oh, we've got a problem. Somebody is asking for an accommodation, and that's uncomfortable potentially. Versus if you're an organization that says, you know what, we value the skill sets of everyone that takes interest in applying for us as an organization. We are fully transparent in that we give our questions to every single person, because it's not a test of cognitive memory in the interview. It's actually an assessment of preparedness and of giving somebody their best chance to show you and demonstrate their skills to you while having preparedness. Yeah. The last thing I just want to say there, Alicia, is there are companies out there that are very specialized in helping you recruit neurodivergent professionals. So if you do a quick Google search after this, you're going to see hiring neurodivergent individuals as a competitive advantage, which I don't necessarily subscribe to that sort of like sales pitch, but there's companies like Specialist Sterna Canada. There's other organizations that we can connect you with that specialize in helping you support that that transition to being more neuro-inclusive. Or if you want to reach out to me after, I'm happy to connect you as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Are there any other questions?
I would love to ask a question. Thank you very much, Tara, for your great presentation. I appreciate it. The 20% that you talked about, and I think you alluded to it already, that a lot of people have variations of these things. It's not a category of one person or another person. And many have figured out how to navigate through life and understand that these types of things are happening to them. Of that 20%, this is going to sound like an awkward question, but being an entrepreneur, a small entrepreneur organization, it takes a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of extra effort, thin margins, skinny margins, like Alicia had mentioned. Is it a good place for this?
Yeah, I'm really glad that you asked that, Peter. And after this, I will post about this, but I just read like a research paper with, it was Essence, and 76% of Gen Zers are not only valuing neurodiversity more than others, but also entrepreneurship. So if we were to take a look at my scenario in isolation, I'm not a Gen Zer, but you heard me say really early on, I'm creative. And everybody on this call can appreciate that when you jump into entrepreneurship, you're a risk taker. Like, you are a risk taker. And I'm a mom. Yeah. So I would say yes. I would say that there's definitely stats and trends towards those that are neurodivergent being very successful in entrepreneurship. What I think we don't want to do, though, is we don't want to also generalize, right? I think that's very subjective. Are they successful in entrepreneurship because they're a risk taker, because they're creative, because they're well supported, because they have a community around them, like Rainforest or Platform, or who knows, right? So always looking at it a bit of objectively per person. But I would definitely say that we have enough research and trending out there that's supporting that, yes, creativity is high. I'm just not subscribing to boxing anybody, right? Because that's why we're here. But I would say yes. Yeah. I would say this. 100% I am here in entrepreneurship because of my ADHD. I will say that. Definitely.
Do you have employees?
Not yet, but I have a vision for someday having a career TLC empire that helps so many people thrive. I've got a vision.
Good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Awesome. Okay, well, maybe we'll go into some breakout rooms, but thank you so much, Tara, for being here today and being so vulnerable and presenting, and it was really great. I resonated with a lot of it, so I really appreciate you being here. For those of you who are new to Rainforest, we go into breakout rooms, and this is our connection time to really get to know each other and spark new ideas, kind of share what you're working on. You can kind of share what we learned today and your thoughts and continue that conversation. We'll probably only have time for one, maybe long breakout room, but we'll see how it goes. And then we come back here at 12:55 for community announcements. So if you have any community announcements, please gear those up. And I see people are dropping off, but don't drop off. This is a really good time to connect with people, guys. Come on. It's fun, I promise. I should just start.
Yeah, and if you stay connected, we're going to get you a free lunch tomorrow.
That's what Peter promises. I can't give you a free lunch, so Peter's not affiliated with this Rainforest person right here.
All right.
Now, yes. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a fantastic time making connections, getting to know one another. So now is community announcements. I have two quick ones. The Leaders, Innovators, Big Ideas podcast. We're looking for hosts. We're looking for guests. If you are interested in, sharing a story, meeting new people, connecting with business leaders across Alberta, this is a great place to hone those skills. And you can connect with Al, who's at the bottom of my screen, but he's given a wave. And also, if you are curious about tech, if you're curious about innovation, entrepreneurship, we are hosting Discover the Innovation Sector. It is going to be a fun, interactive experience that will help you explore and navigate how to build a startup, what resources are available in the innovation sector. So if you're looking to check that out, I'll throw the link in the chat. That's happening November 15th at Platform Calgary. And we also encourage you, if you know people that aren't in the innovation and tech space, please invite them, because we want to get all Calgarians involved in innovation and tech and show them that it's open and inclusive to everyone. And that's it for me. So if anyone has any announcements, please feel free to raise your hand or just unmute and share them.
I have a question.
I wasn't kidding about the free lunch tomorrow at Calgary, the Social Innovation Hub, and it's all about building a strong entrepreneurial mind. It's a free program and it's a series, so I think there's still a few tickets. They might be sold out, but I put the post, I posted the link here. Thank you. Sorry.
I was going to ask Al a question about the podcasting. I see that the app that we use right now for recording is changing there. So any news on that side, or?
Yeah, just found out about that myself, and it's a major issue. I'm talking with Rainforest right now about seeing if we could potentially get a paid subscription for it, and then we would just need to kind of share that with the people that want to record an episode. In the meantime, you could potentially do it through Zoom if you have a Zoom account that will allow you to go for more than whatever 30-40 minutes or whatever it is. And then you would just want to record the channels independently. So there's some ways around it. And then of course we do have podcast gear that people can sign out or borrow. So there is the option of actually doing it face to face in real life, which is something we haven't done for a while, but it does still happen. So yeah, we'll get around it.
Awesome.
Awesome. All right. Any other announcements?
Anyone have money they want to give to the podcast?
Yeah.
Can I do like a small business plug if you guys don't mind? Because I'd love to post this on LinkedIn that we were all here. Is everybody comfortable doing like a screenshot? Just like a hey. Yeah, okay, awesome. So I'm just gonna do a snippet in like 3 seconds. So just get on your best, like, ready?
Smile.
All right.
Don't look bored.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you
As
so
wide
much.
as I can make my eyes.
Everybody.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tara, for being here today.
Thanks,
Again,
Tara.
appreciate it. Thank you everyone for joining us. Join us next week. It's virtual. The topic is TBD. You'll find out when you get there. So definitely join us. It's a surprise.
Brilliant job, Amber. Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Always.
All right. Thanks, everyone. See you next Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone.